Psalm 11. To the choir master of David. In the Lord I take refuge. How can you say to me, flee like a bird to the mountains, for lo, the wicked bend the bow. They have fitted their arrow to the string to shoot in the dark at the upright in heart. If the foundations are destroyed, what can the righteous do? The Lord is in his holy temple. The Lord's throne is in heaven. His eyes behold, his eyelids test the children of Adam. The Lord tests the righteous and the wicked, and his soul hates those who love violence. On the wicked he will rain coals of fire and brimstone. A scorching wind shall be the portion of their cup. For the Lord is righteous, he loves righteous deeds. The upright shall behold his face. How many of us have read any of the Harry Potter novels or seen the movies? Yeah, I thought so. All right. Many of us have enjoyed the Harry Potter novels over the years, and many of us have favorite passages in the various books of the series. I happen to love the description in Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, the third book, of the 2 weeks when Harry, left on his own in Diagon Alley, is free to wander about among the shops, buying the school supplies for his upcoming third year at Hogwarts, and being treated to free ice creams by Florian Fortescue while doing his over-the-summer coursework. I also love how Fred and George Weasley set off the massive display of fireworks and turned the upstairs corridor into a swamp in magnificent acts of resistance against Professor Umbridge in Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. That's the fifth book. Hermione has an acerbic sense of humor, which I quite enjoy. What are you going to do, snore at them? And I love the scene also in Order of the Phoenix in which she, Harry, Luna Lovegood, whose father is the publisher of a not very highly regarded magazine, and trashy tabloid-esque reporter Rita Skeeter meet in the Three Broomsticks pub in the village next to the school to work out how Harry will tell Rita his story, including how he was nearly killed by the newly returned Voldemort in the churchyard, a narrative which is quite different from the official Ministry of Magic approved version of events. There are, of course, some incidents in the Harry Potter books which really get to me. The last novel, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, which is essentially adult-level fiction, has a number of passages which are emotionally difficult to read. Kreacher the house elf, who is partially responsible for the death of Harry's godfather Sirius Black, and is a slave bound to the house which Harry inherited from Sirius, is magically compelled to tell a particularly harrowing tale in which Voldemort, the Dark Lord, the villain of the saga, had bound a fragment of his soul to a locket and set up a booby trap to protect the locket, complete with a poisonous magic potion, which he made Kreacher, the house elf, drink, and then he just left the house elf there to die. But Kreacher's magical enslavement compelled him to return to Sirius's younger brother Regulus, whom Kreacher loved as much as he hated Sirius, which is why he survived. On the other hand, a house elf in Deathly Hallows who doesn't survive is Dobby, whom Harry had helped to set free. Dobby is mortally wounded while helping Harry and his friends escape, and Harry digs Dobby's grave by himself without using magic. For every drop of his sweat and every blister felt like a gift to the house elf who had saved their lives. His scar burned, but he was master of the pain. He felt it, yet was apart from it. He had learned control at last. Learned to shut his mind to Voldemort, the very thing Dumbledore had wanted him to learn from Snape. Just as Voldemort had not been able to possess Harry while Harry was consumed with grief for Sirius, So his thoughts could not penetrate Harry now while he mourned Dobby. Grief, it seemed, drove Voldemort out. Though Dumbledore, of course, would have said that it was love. But what really gets me every time is the inscription Harry magically carves onto the rock he puts at the head of the grave. Here lies Dobby, a free elf. It was the late Queen Elizabeth II who helped popularize the saying, though she didn't originate it, that grief is the price we pay for love. And we all know grief at some level. Part of mine is that this Wednesday is the 5th anniversary of Joyce's death. But this message really isn't about grief so much. One more of my favorite passages in the Harry Potter novels comes in the very first book called Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone in this country, and Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone in J.K. Rowling's native Britain. During Harry's first Christmas at Hogwarts, so he's 11 at the time, he uses his late father's invisibility cloak to wander undetected around the castle several nights in a row. It's during the first of these adventures on Christmas night, which happens to be the first decent Christmas Harry has ever had. It's when Harry discovers a mysterious mirror which appears to be magical. It has a strange inscription on the frame, which has always sounded a bit like Welsh to me. Ersed stra eru oit ube kafru oit onwosi. We learn eventually that the artifact is called the Mirror of Erised, which is a fitting name because the inscription actually reads, "I show not your face but your heart's desire," written backwards. And as Professor Dumbledore, the headmaster of Hogwarts, explains to Harry on his third trip to the mirror, your heart's desire is precisely what the mirror shows everyone. To Harry, the mirror showed his family, all of whom are now deceased. To Harry's best friend Ron, who is the youngest of 5 brothers with a younger sister to boot, it showed him making a name for himself without any of the rest of his family being in the picture. As Dumbledore explains to Harry, men have wasted away before it, entranced by what they have seen, or been driven mad, not knowing if what it shows is real or even possible. The mirror will be moved to a new home tomorrow, Harry, and I ask you not to go looking for it again. If you ever do run across it, you will now be prepared. It does not do to dwell on dreams and forget to live. Remember that. Now, in talking about the Harry Potter novels, I realize that some transgender people, or some who consider themselves allies of transgender people, have had a falling out in recent years with J.K. Rowling, originally over a comment she made online. Joanne Rowling, who's a feminist, objected when she saw biological women who've been genetically female from birth referred to as people with a uterus, remarking that we already have a word for that, women. Rowling, who just had her 60th birthday last week, grew up in a time when the women's movement and the civil rights movement in this country were pretty much marching hand in hand, and they were informing similar movements around the world. That, of course, naturally made her sensitive to attitudes and statements she saw as misogynistic or anti-feminist. Joyce was the same way. However, having grown up as the chubby kid with glasses for much of my public school career, I can understand the perspective of both people who are sensitive toward what they consider demeaning or exclusionary language directed at women, and people who are sensitive to what they consider demeaning or exclusionary language, or worse, directed at transgender people. And I think there's truth in both perspectives. And I also cannot imagine that a writer who spends so much time on showing that prejudice against people is wrong is actually prejudiced herself. After all, what did Bruce Springsteen say in his song Hungry Heart? Everybody needs a place to rest. Everybody wants to have a home. Don't make no difference what nobody says. Ain't nobody likes to be alone. Everybody's got a hungry heart. Everybody's got a hungry heart. Lay down your money and you play your part. Everybody's got a hungry heart. Where I agree with the point that I think Rowling was trying to make is that when confronted with unfair privilege, we can either abolish the privilege altogether or abolish it by democratizing it and extending it to everyone. At that point, the privilege, which comes from two Latin words meaning a private law, ceases to exist. If everybody has it, it isn't private anymore. In other words, it isn't equality if a privilege is taken from one group and given to another group. It's really what I call transfer of privilege. But if it isn't right for the first group to have a privilege, it's no better for any subsequent group to have the same privilege unless everybody else has it as well. But that still leaves us with the question of how all of this fits together. In this week's text, the psalmist, ostensibly King David, asks the question, if the foundations are destroyed, what can the righteous do? I think pretty much everybody in this room will probably agree that the foundations of our country and the life we thought we knew as recently as the beginning of this year are being systematically attacked and undermined, if not destroyed outright. We know what one of the deepest, most desperate desires of our hearts is. We want our country back. And we don't need any magic mirror to tell us that. I once went to see the famous theologian Walter Brueggemann, who died 2 months ago, with a friend of mine. And I'll never forget one of the things he said. Brueggemann talked about how the Book of Lamentations has gained in popularity in recent years. And he mentioned a fellow who had said to him, I just want my world back. People feel lost and disoriented, especially with the pace of change, just as Cheryl Bridges has told us how many times now? But we can't give up. As a quote attributed to late-night talk show host Stephen Colbert tells us, despair is a victory for hate. Hate wants us to be too weak to change anything. Love does not despair. Love makes us strong. Love gives us the courage to act. Love gives us hope that change is possible. Love allows us to change the script. Or as Deutero-Isaiah once asked, who among you will give ear to this, will attend and listen for the time to come? Which is Isaiah 42:23. Again, Walter Brueggemann puts it this way. Like the ancient prophets, we are dispatched back to the good work entrusted to us. It is the work of peacemaking. It is the work of truth-telling. It is the work of justice doing. It is good work, but it requires our resolve to stay the course, even in the face of the forces to the contrary that are sure to prevail for a season. In the spirit of Acts 5:29, we must obey God rather than men. In 1 Kings 19, when Elijah goes to the mountain of God, wallowing in self-pity, the Lord speaks to him in that still small voice so beloved of us Quakers. And what does God do? God gives Elijah more jobs to do and tells him that there are 7,000 in Israel who are still faithful. He's not alone, and neither are we. So attend your protest marches. Write your letters to the editor or to your representatives in Congress. Stand up for those who have nobody else in this world to stand up for them. Keep the spirit of hope alive. In a particularly apt bit of Jewish wisdom drawn ultimately from Micah 6:8 and Pirkei Avot, or the Ethics of the Fathers, a tractate in the Talmud, chapter 2, section 16, do not be daunted by the enormity of the world's grief. Do justly now. Love mercy now. Walk humbly now. You're not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to abandon it. Amen.